protect you. If you forget to protect Sanatana Hindu Dharma, you lose the very right of living. After that, who bothers and what bothers whether you are alive or dead? Asuras and Rakshasas will eat you so that the burden on the earth is reduced. Seeing that, Maya will just keep quiet. To understand the responsibilities of a Hindu. If I am born to a Hindu parent and if I am a living, practicing Hindu, what are the responsibilities I have? And in this context, we want to share the importance of the need of a Hindu nation. How the Hindus have lost the Hindu nation and the responsibilities that we have in reviving the re-establishing the Hindu nation on the planet Earth. Now, a short introduction to Hinduism. Hinduism represents the world's most ancient yet progressive indigenous spiritual tradition. It is an open framework model of civilization that stands for global peace, vegetarianism, non-violence, yoga, worship of nature, temple-based living, manifesting spiritual powers, inherent divinity of every being. Now, the Hindu nations were ecosystems where more and more enlightened beings could be produced so that the enlightened civilization would be kept alive with and its great gifts shared with the world. Now let's take a look at some of the references of the Hindu nation from the Hindu scriptures. The 128th chapter, verse 99 to 101 says, at the time of the rule of Bhagavan Rama, there were no widows to lament, nor there was any danger from wild animals, nor any fear born out of diseases. The world was bereft of thieves and robberies. No one felt worthless, nor did old people perform obsequies concerning youngsters. Every creature felt pleased. Everyone was intent on their virtue, turning their eyes towards Rama alone. The creatures did not kill one another. People survived for progeny and all free of illnesses and grief. The trees that were bearing flowers and fruits regularly without any injury and pests and insects. The clouds were raining in time and the wind was delightful to the touch. Every caste was performing their own duties, sad of any grief. People were intent on virtue and lived without telling lies. All the people were endowed with excellent characteristics. All were engaged in virtue. So here is an example of how when the ruler and the people, when they take responsibility for the keeping the tradition alive, when they take the responsibility of Sanatana Hindu Dharma, how the nations existed. Here, one of the best Hindu kingdoms and the best ruler, Bhagavan Rama. And when he was ruling the kingdom, how the people were happy, people were bereft of mental grief, and the trees were, the nature, they lived in such tune with the nature, there were no illnesses, everybody was performing their duties, everybody was living with intent on virtue, they lived without telling lies, and all the creatures were living happily. This is how Hindu nations were and are supposed to be. Not just at the time of Rama, even during the time of Yudhishthira describes Hastinapur kingdom, which was ruled by Yudhishthira. He says, the Devas granted rains to fulfill all wants. The world became free of all disease. There was no hunger or thirst anywhere. There was no mental suffering. Those without livelihood were given livelihood. There was abundance all around. There were no worldly worries left for anyone, and there was no cause to fear either. Happiness on earth was in fact even greater than in the heavens. This is from Srimad Mahabharata, Ashwamedika Parva, the 14th Parva, the 15th chapter. Sage Vaishampayana, the narrator of Mahabharata, speaks to King Janamejaya, the grandson of Pandavas. Now, we saw some of the examples of the Hindu nation. Now we are going to look at what were the contributions the Hindu nations did to the world. The Hindu nations had so much to contribute to the world in every field: enlightenment, health, medicine, art, science, technology, aviation, dance and music, clothes and jewelry, social, judicial, political, legal systems, anywhere you name, the Hindu nations had so much to contribute to the world. Now, how were the Hindu nations destroyed? The destruction of the Hindu civilization, the first phase, that of the Islamic invasions. Now, from 800 to 1700 AD, the physical destruction of the Hindu civilization happened. In the direct reference from the story of civilization, our Oriental heritage, the reference from the book by Will Durant, he says, the Mohammedan conquest of India is probably the bloodiest story in history. The Islamic historians and scholars have recorded with great glee and pride the slaughters of Hindus, forced conversions, abduction of Hindu women and children to slave markets, and the destruction of temples carried out by the warriors of Islam during 800 AD to 1700 AD. Millions of Hindus were converted to Islam by sword during this period. Millions were raped and murdered and dismembered. And in the words of Abdul Wasaf from Tajiyat ul Amsar, describing the Islamic law prescribing Hindus as conveyed to Alauddin Khilji by his quasi-legal advisor. Hindus are like mud. If silver is demanded from them, they must with the greatest humility offer gold. If a Mohammedan desires to spit into a Hindu's mouth, Hindu should open it wide for the purpose. God created the Hindus to be slaves for Mohammedans. The Prophet had ordained that if the Hindus do not accept Islam, they should be imprisoned, tortured, and finally put to death, and they promoted the prisoners into bequest Turks. The next phase of the destruction of the Hindu civilization started with the British occupation from 1700 to 1947 AD, which led to the economic and psychological destruction of Hindu civilization. In the words of Will Durant, he says, I have seen great people starving to death before my eyes, and I'm convinced that this exhaustion and starvation are due not as a beneficiary claim to overpopulation and superstition, but to the most sordid and criminal exploitation of one nation by another in all of recorded history. The British Empire used all possible means to destroy Hindu civil and cultural institutions in order to delegitimize and demoralize the indigenous people of India so that they become slaves in their own hand. The cunning strategies used by the British were discriminatory laws to instill feelings of racial inferiority, engineered famines to starve natives into submission, annexed Hindu kingdoms to undermine native rule, mistranslated Hindu scriptures to instill anti-Hindu narratives, destroyed indigenous Gurukul education system, destroyed the local industries and forced the importation of British goods, and banned Indians from owning or producing firearms. During the British occupation, $45 trillion were looted from India over 200 years. 45 million Hindus killed due to famines and poverty imposed by British policies and reprisal killings for 1857 mutiny. 680 Hindu nations served by the British Raj. In the words of the member of the Parliament of India, it's one of the richest countries of the world. Over 200 years of exploitation, looting, and destruction reduced it to a poster child of a third world poverty. However, things didn't stop just with the British occupation. Even after the independence of India, Hindus continued to face the destruction of the Hindu civilization. Now, in the words of Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India, he says, what a disgusting and savage people we are. Politics, progress, socialism, communism, science, what are they before this black religious savagery? In the words of Ambedkar, who was the first Law Minister of India and the principal architect of the Indian Constitution, he says, if Hindu Raj does become a fact, it will no doubt be the greatest calamity for this country. No matter what the Hindus say, the Hinduism is a menace to liberty, equality, and fraternity. It is incompatible with democracy. The Hindu Raj must be prevented at any cost. These are the direct words of the India's first law minister. The modern Indian legal system, academia, and media all systematically undermine, suppress, and delegitimize the Hindu institutions and culture. To give an example, the Indian Constitution established government control of government control and taxation over Hindu temples, schools, etc., while other religions are free from interference. The Article 26 to 30 of the Indian Constitution discriminate against Hindus by giving special rights and benefits to non-Hindus through government benefits, scholarship, etc. Hindu kingdoms and self-governance has been abolished. Anti-superstition laws are passed to criminalize only Hindu practices. Mainstream Indian academics describe Hindus as sexist, racist, backwards, and oppressors. Negative media portrayals of Hindus in Bollywood TV and in television. Now, the media narratives are also used to abuse, demoralize, stereotype Hindus. Now, Bollywood and other mainstream media outlets consistently portray Hindu gods and gurus as cartoonish, dishonest, corrupt, sex fiends in matters similar to British imperial propaganda. The media narratives are used to shape human consciousness and further political agendas. The racist British colonial stereotypes portraying Hindus as superstitious, backwards, and corrupt are perpetuated by their brown British successors in modern India unabated. So here you can see like the pictures of Hindu gods being ridiculed, Hindu gurus being shown as comedians, and all the villains, all the negative characters of the movies will always have Hindu symbols. All the negative characters will have Hindu symbols like Kumkum and Tripundri and Trishul, and all the heroes will be either anti-Hindu or secular. At least the way it is shown on the television.